Hello, and welcome back to the English Learning Podcast. I'm Brain. And as always, I'm here with my amazing co-host, Anna. Hey, Anna, how are you today?
Hi, Brain. I'm doing great, and I'm really excited about today's topic. I think it's something so many of our listeners will find helpful.
Absolutely! Because today, we're talking about how to talk English without thinking. Sounds strange, right? Talk without thinking? But actually, it's one of the most powerful skills for becoming fluent.
Yes, and Brain, when I first started learning another language, I used to overthink every sentence before I spoke. I'd worry, is this grammar right? Is my pronunciation okay? And guess what? I'd end up freezing or taking forever to say simple things.
Oh, I can totally relate. I remember when I was learning French, I'd think so hard about every word by the time I finally spoke. The conversation had already moved on.
Exactly. So, in today's episode, we're going to help you, our listeners, stop getting stuck in your head. We'll share why we overthink when speaking English, how to train yourself to speak more naturally, and practical techniques to build that automatic speaking ability.
That's right. By the end of this episode, you'll have a clear action plan. And we'll even do a little live challenge ourselves to show you how it works in real time.
So, stay with us and let's learn how to stop overthinking and start speaking English with confidence.
Let's get started! All right, Anna, let's dive into the first big question. Why do so many people overthink when they're trying to speak English?
Good question. I think the number one reason is fear of making mistakes. People are so afraid of saying the wrong thing, maybe the wrong word, the wrong tense, or just sounding silly. And because of that fear, they slow down and start analyzing everything before they speak.
Absolutely. And that fear often comes from past experiences. Like maybe someone corrected them in a way that felt embarrassing, or they got laughed at. Even small things like that can really stick in your mind.
That's true. I had a student once, Brain, she told me she stayed silent in meetings at work for months because one time she mispronounced a word and her coworker smirked at her. Just one small moment, but it made her overthink everything after that.
Oh, I've seen that too. It's like our brain tries to protect us from embarrassment, but ends up blocking us from speaking at all.
Exactly. And I think another big reason people overthink is that they feel they need to speak perfectly. There's this pressure: I need the perfect grammar, the perfect word, the perfect accent, and that's just too much to handle while you're trying to communicate.
Right. And here's the funny part. Native speakers don't even speak perfectly. We make grammar mistakes. We use the wrong word. Sometimes we pause, we change our mind mid-sentence.
So true. But learners hold themselves to this super high standard, and that creates this mental block. You're so busy checking every word in your head, you lose the natural flow of the conversation.
Let's not forget confidence, too. If you don't feel confident in your English, your brain goes into safety mode. It keeps checking and double-checking everything because it's trying to avoid risks. But in reality, this just slows you down.
That's such a good point. And here's something I've noticed. Sometimes people actually know the English they need. They know the words, they've learned the grammar, but when it's time to speak, they freeze up because their brain is too busy thinking about how to speak instead of just speaking.
I like to compare it to driving. When you first learn, you overthink everything. Where's the brake? Am I signaling? Is my speed okay? But after practice, you just drive. You don't think about every tiny move.
Great comparison. And with English, we want to help people get to that level where speaking becomes more automatic, where they trust their knowledge instead of analyzing every word.
So to sum up, people overthink because of fear of mistakes, the pressure of perfection, low confidence, and because they're focusing too much on rules instead of communication.
Exactly. And in the next part, we're going to break down what it really means to talk without thinking and how it's not about speaking carelessly, but about speaking with flow.
Stay with us. It's about to get really interesting. All right, Anna, now that we know why people overthink, let's get to the heart of the matter. What does it actually mean to talk without thinking? It sounds a bit strange, doesn't it?
It does. Some might even worry, does that mean I'll just say random things without thinking? But that's definitely not the case.
Right. Talking without thinking doesn't mean being careless or making endless mistakes. It means speaking more naturally, almost like your words flow from your brain to your mouth automatically.
Exactly. Think of it like riding a bike or playing a sport. At first, you think about every little movement, how to pedal, where to balance, but after a while, it becomes second nature.
Great example. When you talk without thinking, your brain isn't stopping to translate or build sentences piece by piece. Instead, it's using what you already know and letting it flow out in a smooth way.
And that's important. It's about trust. Trusting your English skills, trusting that even if you make a small mistake, people will understand you.
Yes, and native speakers do this all the time without even realizing it. They don't think, okay, now I need a subject, then a verb, then an object. They just speak.
So it's not about speaking perfectly or planning every sentence in your head. It's about letting your brain work on autopilot for speaking while your conscious mind focuses on the meaning and the message.
That autopilot happens when you've practiced enough that your brain builds automatic patterns. It's like muscle memory, but for your speech.
And when you can do this, you sound more confident, your speech is faster and more natural, and conversations feel easier and more fun.
So talking without thinking means speaking instinctively, without getting stuck in your head, but still communicating clearly.
Exactly. And later in the episode, we'll share practical steps to help our listeners build that automatic speaking ability.
I can't wait. But first, let's explore the science behind how our brain does this. It's really fascinating. All right, Anna, now let's get a little scientific. How does the brain actually manage to speak English without thinking so much? What's going on inside our heads?
That's a fascinating question. So, when we're learning a language, our brain is constantly working to create something called automaticity. Have you heard that word before?
I've heard it, but can you explain it for our listeners?
Sure, automaticity means your brain can do something automatically without needing to consciously think about every step. Like when you learn to drive or type on a keyboard, at first you're slow and careful, but after enough practice, it becomes automatic.
So in English speaking, automaticity means your brain recognizes common words and phrases as patterns, so you don't have to build sentences word by word anymore?
Exactly. Instead of translating from your native language or constructing sentences from scratch, your brain retrieves these patterns quickly from long-term memory. This is why fluent speakers sound smooth and fast.
That makes a lot of sense. Is this related to muscle memory?
Yes, speaking uses muscles in your mouth, tongue, and throat, and with practice, your brain and muscles coordinate better. This muscle memory helps you pronounce words and phrases more naturally, without overthinking each sound.
So the more you practice speaking and listening, the more your brain builds these automatic pathways.
Right. The brain creates connections called neural pathways. When you repeat words and phrases, these pathways become stronger and faster. That's why regular practice is so important.
Interesting. And I guess this is also why immersion helps. Because hearing and using English a lot helps build those pathways quicker.
Definitely, immersion gives your brain constant exposure, so it keeps reinforcing those automatic patterns. Over time, speaking without thinking feels natural because your brain knows what to say instantly.
So the science behind talking without thinking is really about building automatic connections in your brain and muscles through repeated practice and exposure.
Exactly. And that's why we always encourage our listeners to speak regularly, even if it feels hard. At first, it's like training your brain and mouth to work together smoothly.
Awesome! Up next, we'll talk about how to overcome the fear of mistakes. Another big reason people get stuck when speaking. All right, Anna, we've talked about the brain and automatic speaking, but there's one huge block for many learners, the fear of making mistakes. How do you see this playing out?
Oh, it's definitely one of the biggest challenges. So many people get stuck because they worry that making a mistake means they'll look stupid or people will judge them.
Yeah, I hear that a lot. But here's a truth, bomb mistakes are actually a necessary part of learning. Without mistakes, you can't improve.
Exactly. And I always remind my students making mistakes means you're trying. It means you're practicing and pushing yourself out of your comfort zone.
I love that. Sometimes silence is actually worse than making a mistake. Because if you don't speak, you miss every chance to practice and get better.
Right. And the people you speak to usually don't expect perfect English. Most listeners want to understand you, not judge you.
That's so important to remember. Plus, when you make mistakes, it helps your brain notice what's wrong and fix it over time.
Exactly. Mistakes are like feedback, little signals showing you where to improve.
I think a lot of learners also get stuck because they focus too much on grammar and pronunciation perfection and forget the main goal, communication.
Yes, communication is the heart of speaking. Even if your grammar isn't perfect, if your message is clear, you've succeeded.
So to overcome fear, one tip I give is to change your mindset. Instead of fearing mistakes, see them as stepping stones.
And practice speaking in low-pressure situations, maybe with friends, language partners, or even talking to yourself. The more you speak, the more comfortable you get with making mistakes.
Great point. The more you expose yourself, the less scary mistakes become.
And remember, every fluent speaker you admire started where you are making mistakes, learning and improving step by step.
Absolutely. So don't let fear stop you. Mistakes are your friends on the road to fluency. All right, Anna. Now that we've talked about why people overthink and how fear of mistakes holds them back, let's share some practical techniques to help our listeners start talking English without thinking so much.
Yes, because knowing the problem is one thing, but actually practicing to fix it is where the magic happens.
Exactly. So, what's the first technique you recommend?
One of my favorites is shadowing. It's simple but powerful. You listen to a short audio or conversation in English, then immediately repeat or shadow what you hear, trying to match the rhythm, pronunciation, and flow.
I love shadowing. It helps train your brain and mouth to work together naturally. And it builds that automatic pattern recognition we talked about earlier.
Right. And you don't need to understand every single word at first. The goal is to copy the flow and sound, which helps you speak more smoothly.
What's another good technique?
Another great one is using fillers to keep the conversation going. For example, saying, well, or let me think when you're unsure instead of freezing or stopping.
Oh yes, fillers are lifesavers. They give you a moment to breathe and think, but they keep your speech flowing so you don't pause awkwardly.
Exactly. I tell my students it's okay to use fillers. Even native speakers do it all the time.
What about practicing with easy topics?
Definitely start with simple topics, like talking about your favorite food, your hobbies, or your daily routine. This reduces pressure because you're not trying to invent complex sentences on unfamiliar subjects.
Great advice. It's like warming up before a game. You build confidence on easy things before moving on to harder topics.
And here's a mini challenge for our listeners. Pick one easy topic and try to speak about it nonstop for 1 minute, even if you make mistakes or repeat yourself.
I love that challenge. It forces you to focus on speaking continuously, which trains your brain to talk without stopping to think.
Finally, consistent daily practice is key. Even just 5 to 10 minutes a day of speaking practice can make a big difference over time.
Consistency beats intensity. It's better to practice a little every day than to cram once in a while.
So, to recap shadowing using fillers starting with easy topics, doing timed speaking challenges, and daily consistent practice.
Those are fantastic techniques. And in a bit, we'll do a live speaking demo ourselves to show how these ideas work in action.
Can't wait for that. But first, let's take a quick break and then jump into our demo.
All right, Anna. Now it's time for our live speaking demo. Let's practice talking English without thinking. I'll pick an easy topic. How about favorite food?
Sounds great, I'll do the same. The rule is speak nonstop for 1 minute. No pausing to think, no correcting yourself. Just keep going.
Okay, I'll go first. Ready? Here we go. So my favorite food is pizza. I love pizza because it's very tasty and easy to eat. There are many kinds of pizza like margherita, pepperoni, veggie, and more. I usually like pepperoni pizza the best because it has a little bit of spicy flavor and cheese. Sometimes I eat pizza with friends or family, and it's always a fun time. I think pizza is a great food because it's simple but also delicious. What about you, Anna?
Nice one, Brain. Okay, my turn. Here we go. My favorite food is sushi. I enjoy sushi because it's fresh and healthy. There are different types of sushi, like salmon rolls, tuna, and vegetable sushi. I especially like salmon sushi because it has a nice texture and flavor. Sometimes I go to sushi restaurants with friends and try different kinds. Eating sushi makes me feel happy and relaxed. I also like to try making sushi at home, though it's a bit tricky, but practice makes perfect.
Wow, that sounded smooth and natural. How did it feel for you to speak without stopping?
Honestly, it felt freeing. I wasn't worried about mistakes, I just focused on sharing my thoughts. It's a great way to build confidence and fluency.
Exactly. And that's what we want for our listeners to get comfortable speaking without pausing to overthink.
So, listeners, your challenge is to try this too. Pick any easy topic and speak about it for 1 minute straight. No stopping, no editing.
Remember, it's okay if you make mistakes or repeat yourself. The goal is to keep the flow going.
That's how you build that automatic speaking muscle. The more you practice, the easier it gets.
All right, Anna, after our speaking demo, let's talk about how listeners can build those automatic English habits every day.
Yes, the key is consistency. Small daily actions add up to big improvements over time.
One habit I always recommend is to think in English throughout your day. Instead of translating from your native language, try to describe what you see or what you're doing in English silently or out loud.
Exactly. For example, when you're making breakfast, say in your head, I'm cutting the bread. Now I'm pouring the juice. This trains your brain to use English automatically.
Another powerful habit is listening regularly, podcasts, audiobooks, or even songs in English. The more you hear natural English, the faster your brain builds those automatic patterns.
And don't forget to speak daily, even if it's just to yourself. Talking out loud, describing your day, or repeating phrases helps your mouth get used to forming English sounds.
Also, keeping a simple English journal where you write a few sentences daily can connect your speaking and writing skills.
All these habits work together, listening, thinking, speaking, and writing to build your English fluency naturally.
So listeners, start small but be consistent. Make English part of your daily routine, and over time you'll notice your speaking becoming automatic. All right, Anna, we've covered a lot today. Now, let's give our listeners a simple action plan they can start right now to stop overthinking when speaking English.
Great idea, Brain. Step 1. Accept that mistakes are part of learning. Don't wait for perfect English, just speak and learn as you go.
Step 2. Practice speaking every day, even for just a few minutes. The techniques we talked about, shadowing fillers or timed speaking challenges.
And step 3, focus on communication, not perfection. Your goal is to get your message across, not to sound like a native speaker immediately.
If you keep these 3 steps in mind, your brain will start trusting your English more and you'll speak without overthinking.
Here's a challenge for our listeners. Today, try speaking English for 2 minutes straight on any simple topic without pausing to think.
Yes, it might feel difficult at first, but remember, fluency comes from practice, not perfection.
And don't forget to share your experience with us in the comments or on social media. We'd love to hear how you're improving.
That's a wrap for today's action plan. Keep practicing and you'll be surprised how fast you improve. Wow, Anna, what a great episode! We've talked about why we overthink the science behind fluent speaking and practical steps to speak English without thinking.
Yes, brain. And most importantly, we gave our listeners simple tools and an action plan to start practicing right away.
Listeners, remember, fluency is a journey. It won't happen overnight, but with daily practice and the right mindset, you'll get there.
So here's your challenge. Speak English for 2 minutes straight today on any topic, no stopping, no correcting. Just flow.
And don't forget to tell us how it went. Leave a comment or send us a message. We love hearing your progress and stories.
Also, if you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to our podcast and share it with friends who want to improve their English too.
Next time, we'll dive into how to sound more natural in everyday English conversations, so don't miss it.
Thanks for joining us today. Keep speaking, keep practicing, and see you soon.
Bye, everyone!